What is going on, everybody? So, if you have not seen this week, the trailer for Wes Anderson's new film, Asteroid City, was released. And it has a stacked cast as per usual. It looks absolutely hilarious. I'm really interested to see the direction that this film takes. And I've talked on my channel before, but Wes is a director who's always meant a whole lot to me. He's one of the first directors when I was relatively young, 14, 15. I started watching his films, and he really kind of opened me up to the world of filmmaking right there with Edgar Wright as two of the really early influential filmmakers that made me think about movies as more than just an entertainment. Like it made me think about film as an art form and how you approach cinematography and soundtrack and all of those things to create these really incredible spectacles. And Wes has always been one of my favorites, and I have never done a ranked list of Wes Anderson's filmography. And some of these films, it's been a year or so since I've seen them, but I would say of all the directors out there, maybe David Lynch is close, but I've seen Wes's movies so many times. And the hard part about making this list is Wes is one of the filmmakers that I genuinely love every film that he's made. I don't think in his catalog that he has ever made a really bad movie. Every single one of his films are enjoyable. The casts are always great. There's always some deeper emotional dynamic, especially about father and son relationships or just familial dynamic in general, that I really appreciated. And so today I'm going to rank his filmography from my least favorite to my favorite. As of right now, prior to the release of Asteroid City, Wes has 10 films in his filmography. So I'm really excited to share my opinion. As I said, I genuinely like every one of these movies. I don't think he has made a bad film in his catalog. This is just, as of right now, the order as to which they fall. This could change at any moment because I love his movies so much. It's difficult for me to kind of put them in this order, but we'll get into it right now. So coming in at number 10 is going to be his debut film, Bottle Rocket. And it's so funny to put this in last place because I genuinely love this movie. I think it is an incredibly impressive directorial debut from Wes. Obviously, it's not as highly stylized as his newer films are. I feel like it's a little bit more rough around the edges. But what I do appreciate about Bottle Rocket is its simplicity. I feel like this dynamic between the three lead characters in this, especially the dynamic between Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson, is handled so perfectly well. There's a lot of amazing one-liners in this. The reason why it falls so low is I feel like when I think about Wes's catalog and the movies I constantly want to go back and revisit, this one's never at the top of my list to want to go back to, but when I do revisit it, I always really enjoy it. Like I said, I think the character dynamics are really great. It's very funny. It's absurd. It's everything you love about Wes in really early stages, and it's kind of crazy to see how he's grown as a filmmaker over the years, but that's why Bottle Rocket falls in 10th place for me. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Isle of Dogs. I absolutely love Wes Anderson's stop motion animation. I think this movie is hilarious. I think it is beautiful to look at. It's crazy to think what Wes is able to pull off with these stop motion animators. I think all of the character dynamics are really great, but I find myself not attaching to these characters as much as I do characters in his other work. And similarly to Bottle Rocket, this is one that I don't think about revisiting as frequently. As much as I do really like it and think that it's so well made and entertaining and funny, it's a little bloated. The pacing of this one isn't perfect compared to a lot of his other films. I feel like the pacing gets kind of sluggish around the middle part of the film. I do love the reveal in this movie. I think Bryan Cranston's vocal performance as the lead is really great. Everybody in this movie does a really fantastic job. It's like I said, it's really difficult to kind of place these, but as far as personal connectivity to the film, that's why Isle of Dogs falls in at 9th place for me. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Wes Anderson's newest film, The French Dispatch. I really love this movie. I feel like it shows how incredible Wes is visually. The cinematography in this is some of the most stunning that he's done in his filmography, next to probably Budapest Hotel. I think all the performances in this are really great, and it was really unique to watch one of his films in this sort of like 3-story structure where it felt more like an anthology film than it did something that's just more of a straightforward narrative. Obviously, when you watch Budapest Hotel, that film has segmentations, but the middle part of that film is just like one elongated story, where The French Dispatch, you have three completely separate stories, which makes sense for this newspaper. And I thought that that was so cool. Each one of the stories has entertaining moments, with the Leah Sado story being the standout in my opinion. I think it's so well done. I also really like the little tiny vignette story with Owen Wilson on his bicycle. My biggest issue with this film is the Frances McDormand, Timothy Chalamet story is really weak writing for Wes Anderson, in my opinion. I found myself kept falling out of that, and until we got to the last act, which I thought was really fantastically well done, that middle portion was such a slog. And not to say that on revisits I won't find something to appreciate about it, but I just feel like that part of the film, in my opinion, could have been cut out, and it would have been a much more cohesive and entertaining experience for me. But this one I've only seen once. It's the film in his catalog I've seen the least, and so it's still kind of like newer in my head as far as the array of his films, but that's why it falls in this spot on my list. Coming in at number 7 is going to be the Darjeeling Limited. I think this is one of the most hated films in Wes's catalog, and I'm not really sure why. I love this movie a lot. I think the relationship between the brothers in this film is handled so perfectly well. And as far as Wes's films, what I love about him as a filmmaker is his movies do feel very like otherworldly almost, in a sense. Like they feel very fantasy, while at the same time having moments that feel very grounded in reality that everyone can relate to at least elements in the film. And what I love about this is the relationship between Adrian Brody, Owen Wilson, and Jason Schwartzman. It feels like a realistic relationship between brothers. The blow-ups that they have with each other, just like they all feel very realistic. I love this whole thing about going to a different country to try to like alleviate your anxieties and your stresses of the world to get over the fact that their dad just died. I think there's so many great elements in that. Their mom is kind of estranged. You see that throughout the film. And there's really funny moments in this. There's also some really somber and beautiful moments. I think the third act in this, there's a specific scene in particular that is some of the heaviest stuff next to like the Royal Tenenbaums that Wes has ever written in a film. And I appreciate this one more and more every time I watch it. And I do think this film, on revisiting in the future, could end up being higher on my list. It just always seems to fall in this spot for me. It does have one of my favorite soundtracks of any Wes Anderson films. I think that it just has a great array of songs that really work well for the movie, but that's why it falls in this spot on my list. Coming in at number 6 is going to be the Royal Tenenbaums. This movie broke me the first time I watched it. You talk about familial dynamics, Wes constantly writing the estranged father character. Gene Hackman in this is absolutely brilliant, but I really think the standout in this movie to me personally is Luke Wilson. His performance in this is so incredible. I feel like he's an actor that throughout his career hasn't always necessarily gotten the best roles, but in this film in particular, his performance is incredible. The dynamic between him and Gwyneth Paltrow is so well written, but all the characters in this are great. Like Owen Wilson, for the brief moment he's in it, is great. Bill Murray does a fantastic job. Danny Glover's great in this. Every single character, Ben Stiller and his kids always crack me up. Every single person in this is so fantastic. Angelica Houston is great. I love whenever she shows up in any of Wes's films. And this one also has a great soundtrack. The needle drop moment with Needle in the Hay from Elliott Smith is one of my favorite moments in all of film history. And this is one that, like, I'm surprised it's not more in a top spot for me, like as far as like the top 3 or top 4. But when I revisit the catalog, I'm always thinking about like how these movies impact me as far as like cohesive story, cinematography, the sound design, and the films above this in the ranked list always hit me just a little bit more. But like I said, Wes's filmography is one of the best of any filmmaker I've ever seen, and so it's really difficult to make this list because of the fact that all of his movies are so fantastic. And like I said, it could literally be any moment that it changes for me, that one of these falls off the list and goes higher up. But for the time being, the Royal Tenenbaums is in that 6th place spot. So we're in top 5 territory now. Coming in at number 5 is The Fantastic Mr. Fox, which honestly could go from 5 to 2 to 1 to 3. I love this movie so much. I think that this stop motion is some of my favorite stop motion animation in all of film history. It's so beautiful. The vocal performances in this are fantastic. The fact that Wes was able to pull George Clooney and Meryl Streep as the leads in this, with obviously the cast of reoccurring characters that happens. I love that it's based off of a Roald Dahl story, and that it's grounded in the fact that kids could watch it, but Wes won't pull away from his sense of humor, where like what the cuss and like every time they instill that in the movie. I think it's so great that Wes refuses to kind of lose that part of himself, even when making something that should appeal more towards a younger audience. And the score to this film, the Alexander Desplat score, is absolutely phenomenal. The original songs for it, the incorporation of the Beach Boys songs in this, all the different songs that come into play, it just has this really inviting and warm atmosphere. And there's still that dysfunctional familial dynamic that Wes is really well known for, that I think works so well in this case. And it's one that I constantly think about over and over again. And it's one in his filmography that I just always want to revisit, and I always think about revisiting. And like I said, the ones above it on this list just kind of inch it out just a little bit. But I love The Fantastic Mr. Fox. I think it is a perfect film, and I always get really excited to watch it whenever it comes back up again. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Moonrise Kingdom. I absolutely adore Moonrise Kingdom. I saw this 2 or 3 times in the theater when it was first released. I think this movie depicts young love, finding yourself, kind of feeling like a fish out of water so perfectly. As far as coming of age films goes, this is one of the best I've ever seen. I think young Jared Gilman and Kara Hayward both give amazing performances. Getting Bruce Willis and Ed Norton in this film, they both are phenomenal. Frances McDormand, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman for the brief moment that he's in it. This has some of my favorite comedic punches in any of Wes Anderson's films. There's like little scenes that I always think about, like Jason Schwartzman talking to the kids, and when he says like, go stand over there by the trampoline, and you just see that kid in that really long shot jumping up and down on the trampoline. Your girlfriend stabbed me with a pair of lefty scissors. Like, there's a ton of lines and moments in this movie that just constantly repeat in my head. And I think this is one of those worlds that is just so immersive, and I never wanted to leave because all of the characters were so well fleshed out. I adore the score to this. I was lucky enough to grab the 10-inch that they did on vinyl that has a couple of the songs that Alexander Desplat did for the score, and it's so beautiful. That Cuckoo song at the end of the film like brought me to tears when this movie ended. And there's something like so relatable about all of the characters in this, even like Bill Murray and his relationship with Frances McDormand. Even though that's not the forefront of the film, I feel like it hits you just as hard when you're thinking about this film as a whole being like relationship dynamics and like this young love between these two kids at a young age, where you're still trying to figure out who you are and who you are going to be, and then looking at a relationship that's very well established with these people who have been together for a very long time, and kind of seeing that dichotomy. And then all the other characters that are introduced are great. I really love the thunderstorm hurricane sequence at the end of this film. I love Bob Balaban's narration throughout it. I think it's fantastic, and this is one that could easily push itself higher on the list throughout revisits because I just think it is phenomenal. Coming in at number 3 is going to be early Wes Anderson, Rushmore. This is one of the films that made me fall in love with Wes Anderson as a filmmaker. It's one of his films that I grow to love more every single time I watch it. I know this isn't high on everyone's list, but I think the young Jason Schwartzman gives a phenomenal performance in this movie. His chemistry with Bill Murray in this is just some of the best I've ever seen put to film. The two of them and their kind of back and forth, how he starts as kind of like a mentor to Max, and he's always there for him and caring for him, and then when the love interest comes into play and Jason Schwartzman thinks that he has a shot with her, and the two of them start bickering and fighting, and they start pulling pranks on each other while Jason Schwartzman starts pulling pranks on Bill Murray. It's just, that whole dynamic is so well written and hilarious, and I think that it really does a good job of, like, you know, Max has this passion for this school, but he's a terrible student, and it's like he wants to have something that defines him in his life, but he's so young, he doesn't really know what that could be. And then you have someone like Bill Murray, who he's got kids and he's a leader, and he, you know, it should be pretty well established in his life, but he doesn't really know where he is either. And seeing that through the perspective of an adult and a kid is really cool. That dichotomy that's introduced really pulls at you, and I think that it's brilliantly well done. All the other characters in this film are fantastic as per usual. This is still kind of rough around the edges, Wes Anderson, where it's not like as highly stylized as some of the other films in his catalog, but I really love this movie a lot. The final sequence in this always puts a huge smile on my face when Faces Ooh La La plays. I think the soundtrack choices to this are absolutely perfect. I feel like Wes is one of the best directors. When it comes to curating playlists, I think he does a really great job for his films, and so that's why Rushmore comes in at number 3 for me. So picking these top 2, it wasn't difficult for me, but I think it'll be interesting to hear what everyone has to say. So coming in at number 2 is the Grand Budapest Hotel. In my opinion, this is Wes Anderson's best made movie. Although it's not my number 1 spot, I think as far as like production design, cinematography, performances from actors, the score choices, everything about Budapest Hotel is perfection from top to bottom. I love every role in this, from, you know, the forefront of Ray Fiennes' character to like side characters like Jeff Goldblum and Willem Dafoe when they come into play. I love the violence in this and how it's really unrestrained, and that's existed in some of his other movies. Even like Moonrise Kingdom, you'll have some violent moments, but this really juggles tone very well, and it's hysterical. It's one of Wes Anderson's funniest movies, and I love the like style structure of like the person reading the book, and then you're introduced to the characters that are in the book that they're reading, and then you're introduced to the real story that's going to be at play throughout the remainder of the film. And like that feels like a heavy introduction into what Wes would go on to do with The French Dispatch. But like this film is so gorgeous to look at from start to finish. I love every scene in this. It's one of those like every frame a painting movies where you could just stop the movie at any moment and the frame you're looking at is going to be so gorgeous. The intentionality with the cinematography in Wes Anderson's films is what makes me love him so much as a filmmaker. But this movie is hysterical. I think Ray Fiennes gives one of the best performances of any actor in any Wes Anderson film. He is absolutely incredible, and this movie just gets better with every time I rewatch it. Honestly, I love it a lot, and I look forward to revisiting this one every single time it comes around. So the number 1 spot, which might be a surprise to some people, is the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And the reason why this film is number 1 on my list is because this is the film, really next to Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz, that made me want to pursue filmmaking and made me want to take an interest in film as a whole. I love everything about this movie. I know this is like one of Wes's critically worst received films, and I'm not really sure why, because I think it is one of his most beautiful, emotional, dynamic films written. You have obviously the estranged father and son relationship with Bill Murray and Owen Wilson's character, and then you have Willem Dafoe's character, who kind of feels like best friends and family with Bill Murray, that when Owen Wilson starts getting closer to him, he starts feeling that separation. Jeff Goldblum in this as the villain is fucking hilarious every time. There's so many moments in this that are, like I said, embedded in my brain of one-liners that just make me lose my mind every time I hear it. The cinematography in this is spectacular. The production design is like unbelievable. The scene where Bill Murray's introducing the boat is like one of the most beautiful shots in all of cinema, tracking through the entirety of the boat. That big set piece that they built is just absolutely incredible. But what really made me fall in love with this movie the first time was the scene where they're on the boat at the end and the Sigur Rós song Starau first started playing, and I was just like, this is the most beautiful blend of music, visuals, performances, to where like, yes, the music is incredibly emotional and the music can move you, but the performances are moving you. The overall emotional impact of this relationship that's been established, another broken relationship, the complex sort of love triangle that begins to form in this film. There's so many amazing character dynamics that are built throughout the Life Aquatic that really have stuck with me over the years, and it's a movie that I fall in love with more every time I see it, and it will always probably be number 1 on my spot of Wes Anderson films, just because of what this film meant to me growing up and how much it shaped me in loving and being more analytical of film. Do you agree or disagree with my ranking of Wes Anderson's films? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your rank list. Let me know what your favorite and your least favorite is, and I can't wait for Asteroid City to add that into the rotation of his films. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material, and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.